Funny thing about people. They keep asking for a sign, begging for a message, crying out into the dark for some kind of answer. But when something finally calls back, they freeze. They say it's coincidence, a trick of the mind, something they must have imagined. They don't want to believe the voice they heard was real, because if it was, then it means someone's actually listening. And that thought scares them more than silence ever did. Maybe that whisper, that shiver down your spine, that feeling you can't explain. It wasn't your imagination. Maybe something louder than the world itself just called your name, and you're too afraid to admit you heard it. The call you ignore today becomes the silence you regret tomorrow. That's how it always goes. People hear something, feel something, and they brush it off. They say it's just a thought, just a coincidence, just their imagination. But deep down, they know it wasn't. They know something real was trying to reach them. It's that strange pull in your chest when you're about to make a mistake. That voice in the back of your head whispering, "Don't do it." That moment when everything around you goes still and you feel like the world just paused for you to listen. But you don't, because you think you have time. Everyone always thinks they have time. You tell yourself you'll listen later, when you're ready, when it's clearer, when life slows down. But life never slows down. The noise just gets louder. You drown that voice under routine, under excuses, under fear disguised as logic. You tell yourself it's not real, because if it is, then you'd have to act. You'd have to change. You'd have to stop pretending. You don't know what you already know. That's why people ignore the call. It's not because they don't hear it. It's because they do. And they're terrified of what it's asking them to become. There's always that one moment, that one instant where the world feels like it's speaking directly to you. You see something, hear something, feel something so strong it shakes you to the core. You can't explain it, but you know it means something. That's the moment that separates the dreamers from the believers, the wanderers from the awakened. Because some will stop and listen, and others will run from it. They'll call it random, they'll laugh it off. They'll say it's nothing. But nothing doesn't echo in your soul like that. Nothing doesn't keep you awake at night. The truth is, the universe doesn't scream. It starts with whispers. It gives you gentle reminders, small nudges, moments that feel too aligned to be coincidence. It's patient at first, waiting for you to notice, but patience fades. The longer you ignore it, the quieter it gets. Not because it's gone, but because you've trained yourself not to hear it. And one day, it stops. That's when the silence hits. The silence that feels heavier than noise. The kind that makes you wish you'd listened when it was still whispering. People mistake silence for peace, but it's not. Sometimes silence is judgment. It's the world saying, you had your chance. You keep asking for signs, for direction, for purpose. But what's the point of sending another message when you didn't answer the first one? That's how life works. The door doesn't stay open forever. You can only walk past your calling so many times before it closes behind you. And when it does, you'll look back and call it fate. You'll say, "It wasn't meant for me," when really, it was. You just didn't pick up the call. It's strange how people ignore what matters most because it doesn't fit their timing. They think they're waiting for the right moment. But the right moment doesn't exist. The call never comes when you're ready. It comes when you're meant to move. It interrupts your plans, breaks your patterns, shakes your comfort. That's how you know it's real. Because truth doesn't wait for convenience. It breaks in uninvited and demands to be heard. But people cling to comfort like it's safety, not realizing comfort is the cage that keeps them from becoming who they're supposed to be. The call isn't always gentle. Sometimes it comes through pain, through loss, through that one thing you swore would never happen. Because nothing wakes a person up like heartbreak. Nothing sharpens the ears like suffering. When life wants your attention, it doesn't whisper sweetly. It screams through chaos. But even then, people find a way to justify it. They call it bad luck, bad timing, misfortune. They never stop to ask what it's trying to teach them. They'd rather curse the pain than listen to what it's saying. But silence, that's different. Silence doesn't teach. It reminds. It reminds you of all the moments you ignored, all the chances you wasted, all the voices you silenced out of fear. And that's the kind of regret that doesn't fade. You can escape noise, but not silence. Because silence follows you. It waits in the quiet moments when the world stops spinning, and you finally have to face yourself. That's when the memory of what you ignored comes back to haunt you. People think regret comes from failure, but it doesn't. It comes from hesitation, from knowing you were called to something more, and choosing not to answer. You don't regret falling. You regret never jumping. You don't regret trying. You regret waiting. That's the irony of it all. You keep asking for guidance while standing next to the echo of the voice you ignored. You keep saying you're lost when the map was in your hands all along. The call doesn't vanish. It waits until you stop pretending you can't hear it. But if you keep ignoring it, it doesn't stay forever. It moves on. Because even destiny gets tired of waiting for someone who won't listen. Faith isn't quiet. It demands your attention. People like to think faith is soft, peaceful, calm. Something gentle they can hold when the world gets loud. But that's not faith. That's comfort. Real faith doesn't whisper sweet words in the dark. It shakes you awake. It doesn't stroke your ego. It tears it apart. Faith isn't a lullaby. It's a scream from somewhere deep inside you saying, "Ev, get up." It's not polite. It's not patient. It's not subtle. It's fire. It burns away everything fake until only the truth is left standing. Everyone says they want faith, but what they really want is assurance. They want guarantees, results, proof. They call that faith. But it's just control wearing a different mask. Faith isn't knowing. It's trusting when everything looks impossible. It's stepping forward when the ground isn't even there yet. That's why so few people have it. Because real faith costs you your certainty, your safety, your illusions. It asks you to move before you see, to act before you understand, to believe before you feel ready. And that kind of surrender terrifies people. People love the idea of faith, but not the reality of it. They post quotes, wear symbols, speak about it in soft tones, but when life breaks, they panic. When things don't go their way, they call it unfair, because they don't really want faith. They want control disguised as belief. Faith isn't about getting what you want. It's about holding on when everything you want is falling apart. It's standing in the storm and refusing to bow, not because you see the light, but because you know it's there, even in the dark. Faith doesn't come from comfort, it's born in chaos. It's not built in the moments that make sense. It's forged in the ones that don't. When you lose everything and still refuse to give up, that's faith. When your heart's broken and you still choose to believe there's meaning, that's faith. When the world laughs at you and you keep going anyway, that's faith. It's messy, it's painful, it's raw. It doesn't ask for your perfection, it asks for your persistence. People confuse silence with absence. When they don't get what they prayed for, they think no one's listening. They think faith failed them. But faith isn't about getting a response. It's about learning to listen in the quiet, because sometimes the answer isn't no, it's not yet. But people can't stand waiting. They want instant miracles, instant validation, instant signs. They forget that patience is the language of the divine, and silence is often the loudest reply. Faith tests you in ways logic never can. It will make you doubt everything you know. It'll strip you of pride, of plans, of power. It will take you to your knees just to see if you'll stand again. That's why it's not quiet. It demands attention. It doesn't want your lip service. It wants your surrender. It wants you to stop pretending you're in control and start trusting the unseen. That's why it feels so uncomfortable. Because faith lives where fear used to rule. You ever notice how people only talk about faith when they're desperate? When everything's falling apart, when there's nowhere left to run, when their strength runs out. That's when they remember it. But faith isn't something you call for rescue. It's something you walk with every day, even when things are fine. Because if you only believe when you need something, that's not faith. That's survival instinct. Faith isn't seasonal. It doesn't show up when you want it. It shows up when you let it. There's a war between what you see and what you believe, and faith lives right in the middle of it. It's the voice that says, keep going when your eyes say, give up. It's the force that makes you move when logic says, stay still. Faith doesn't follow reason. It creates it. And that's why most people run from it. Because it asks for the one thing no one wants to give: trust without proof. Faith isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's the choice to believe again after being broken, to stand again after falling, to love again after losing. It's not clean. It's covered in scars. But those scars become reminders that you've seen darkness, and still chose light, that you've tasted fear and still chose hope, that you've been abandoned and still kept believing. That's not weakness. That's faith at its loudest. People want faith to sound peaceful, but the truth is, it roars. It shouts in your chest when you try to give up. It drags you out of bed when your soul feels heavy. It doesn't let you quit, even when quitting makes sense. Because real faith doesn't care about comfort. It cares about calling. It's not quiet obedience, it's wild trust. The kind that doesn't ask for proof, doesn't beg for signs, doesn't need applause. It just moves, it listens, it acts, and it keeps going, even when the world goes silent. Signs don't repeat forever, they fade when you don't listen. Life is patient, but not endless. It keeps trying to get your attention, again and again, through moments, through people, through pain. The first time it whispers. The second time it nudges. The third time it shakes everything around you. But when you still pretend not to see, when you keep calling it coincidence, it stops trying. The silence after that isn't peace, it's consequence. Because the truth is, the universe never stops talking. You just stop being worthy of the message. People always think they'll get another chance. Another sign. Another warning. But life doesn't work on your schedule. It gives what you need when you need it. And if you ignore it, it moves on. That's what people never understand. Missed signs don't disappear. They transform into lessons. The kind that hurt. The kind that make you wish you'd paid attention the first time. The kind that leaves scars instead of whispers. You can always tell when someone ignored their signs. They talk about bad luck a lot. They say, nothing ever goes right for me. But luck isn't the problem. Awareness is. They were told in 1,000 ways to change direction, to leave, to stop, to listen. But they didn't, because they wanted control. They wanted the outcome to fit their plan. So they stayed, and the signs stopped being gentle. Life got louder. And when it finally broke them, they called it unfair. But it wasn't unfair. It was the final warning they refused to hear. You ever notice how signs always come before the fall? There's always something. A feeling, a conversation, a coincidence that feels too sharp to ignore. But people do. They tell themselves they're overthinking. They say, it's probably nothing. They silence their instincts because truth is inconvenient. It ruins comfort. It challenges decisions. It exposes lies. And no one wants to admit they're lying to themselves. So they shut out the signs and keep walking toward the edge, pretending they don't see the cracks beneath their feet. The world doesn't punish you for ignoring signs. It just stops helping you. It takes away the guidance you didn't appreciate. And when you finally start begging for direction, there's only silence. Not because it's gone, but because you trained yourself not to hear it. That's the cruel beauty of it. You lose the ability to recognize what once came naturally. And that silence, that emptiness, becomes your new normal. Until one day, you realize how loud the quiet really is. People don't like responsibility. That's why they call everything coincidence. Because if it's a coincidence, It means they don't have to act. They can keep doing what they want and blame the universe for what happens. It's easier to say, "It just happened," than to admit, "I was warned." Because if you admit you saw the signs, then you have to live with the fact that you ignored them. That's a truth most people can't handle. Sometimes the signs come as discomfort. A person who drains your energy, a job that feels wrong, a gut feeling that something's off. But people don't listen to discomfort. They medicate it, distract it, deny it. They say, "I'll be fine," and force themselves to stay in situations that are already burning. And then they act surprised when everything collapses. But collapse is just clarity that came too late. The signs were there. They just didn't want to believe them. The universe isn't cruel. It's honest. It gives you choices. It tells you, softly at first, that something's wrong. It gives you hints in moments of stillness, in dreams, in déjà vu. But when you ignore them, it has no choice but to turn those whispers into consequences. Because that's how growth works. If you won't move willingly, life moves you by force. That's why the same lessons keep repeating until you finally learn them. They're not punishment. They're mercy disguised as pain. There's a moment, always, right before things fall apart, when you know. You can feel it. The energy shifts. The air feels heavier. Something in you whispers, "This isn't right." That's the moment people bury deepest. They know what's coming, but they don't want to admit it. Because admitting it means taking responsibility. It means change. It means leaving something behind. So they stay. And the signs, tired of being ignored, disappear. Until one day, they wake up and wonder when everything started going wrong. The truth is, it didn't start. It ended when they stopped listening. Signs are like light in the dark. They guide. They reveal, they protect. But light isn't permanent. If you don't follow it, it fades. And when it fades, you're left wandering in the same darkness you swore you'd never return to. That's the tragedy of ignorance. The signs weren't meant to last forever. They were moments, fleeting, sacred, precise. And once they pass, they don't come back. Not because life stopped speaking, but because you stopped deserving to hear it. Fear hides behind doubt, pretending to be logic. People love to sound rational. They dress their fear in fancy words like, "I'm just being realistic," or "I need to think it through." But deep down, they're not thinking. They're hesitating. They're scared, and they're trying to make it look smart. Fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers in the calmest voice, convincing you to stay where you are. It tells you that waiting is wisdom, that safety is maturity, that risk is foolishness. And the worst part, you believe it. You call it reason, when it's really just fear wearing a suit. The mind is clever. It doesn't like being called afraid, so it hides behind explanations, plans, overthinking. It'll make you analyze every little detail until your courage dies of exhaustion. You'll call it being careful. You'll say you're just preparing, but you're not preparing. You're avoiding. Because preparation feels responsible, while fear feels weak. That's how fear wins. It convinces you that hesitation is intelligence. It gives you 1,000 reasons to stay still and calls it common sense. You see, doubt isn't the enemy. It's the disguise. Fear uses it as camouflage. It doesn't want you to recognize it, because once you do, it loses power. So it hides behind questions. What if it doesn't work? What if you fail? What if they laugh? What if you lose everything? And it sounds so convincing, doesn't it? Because fear always uses truth as bait. Yes, you could fail. Yes, people could laugh. Yes, you could lose. But so what? The question fear never lets you ask is, what if you win? People confuse logic with safety. They think being careful means being smart. But the truth is, logic without courage is just fear pretending to be wisdom. You can reason yourself out of every dream if you try hard enough. You can convince yourself to stay in a life you hate just because it's familiar. And you'll call it logic. You'll say, I'm just being practical. But practicality has killed more dreams than failure ever did. Fear doesn't need to stop you with force. It just needs to delay you. It knows time will do the rest. Every day you hesitate, your passion fades a little more. Every excuse becomes easier to believe. You start saying, maybe later, maybe next time, until one day there's no next time left. That's how fear wins, quietly, slowly, politely. It doesn't drag you down screaming. It lets you settle. It lets you smile and tell everyone you're fine while you die inside, piece by piece. You ever notice how the scariest people aren't the ones who failed, but the ones who never tried? They carry that look. The one that says they've been haunted by what ifs their whole life. Fear told them not to risk it, and they listened. They chose comfort over courage, and now they live with quiet regret. Because regret is fear's reward. That's what you get for listening too long. A safe life, sure, but not a full one. Fear's favorite trick is logic. It'll make your reasons sound noble. It'll tell you you're being smart by waiting, that timing matters, that conditions aren't right yet. It's patient. It'll wait with you forever. And it's polite enough to let you think it's your decision. That's the brilliance of fear. It doesn't need chains. It just needs your agreement. People worship control. They think if they analyze everything, they'll avoid pain. But the truth is, no amount of logic can protect you from life. Pain comes anyway. Loss comes anyway. Change comes whether you like it or not. So why let fear decide what you do? Why let something that's scared of the unknown be your guide? Logic should serve courage, not replace it. The smartest decisions often look insane at first. But that's because fear doesn't understand vision. It only understands safety. The saddest part is how good fear is at sounding like reason. It'll even borrow your voice. You'll start saying things like, I'm not ready. It's not the right time. I just need more clarity. But deep down, you know it's not clarity you want. It's permission. You're waiting for someone to tell you it's safe. But life never gives you that kind of safety. The risk never disappears. You either jump or you stand there forever convincing yourself that you will. someday. Fear doesn't always look like trembling or panic. Sometimes it looks calm, polite, and rational. It wears a smile. It sounds like a friend giving advice. But listen closely. The tone never changes. It always ends with don't. Don't try. Don't change. Don't speak. Don't move. Fear never says go. It never says believe. It never says act. And if you let it talk long enough, it becomes your voice. You start doubting every instinct, every dream, every spark, until there's nothing left but logic. And logic doesn't build anything. It only maintains what already exists. Fear hides behind doubt because doubt looks intelligent. But intelligence without action is paralysis. You can be the smartest person in the room and still lose to the one who simply tried. Because logic may calculate possibilities, but courage creates them. Fear knows that. That's why it hides. Because once you see it for what it is, it has nowhere left to run. When destiny speaks, hesitation is disobedience. Most people think destiny knocks politely, gives you time to prepare, maybe even leaves a note. It doesn't. It shows up unannounced, in the middle of your ordinary life, and dares you to move. It doesn't wait for your approval or your comfort. It doesn't care if you're ready. It calls your name and expects you to answer. But people hesitate. They think too much, question too long, and the moment passes. Destiny doesn't shout twice. It speaks once. And silence after that isn't patience. It's punishment. The truth is, everyone hears it. That pull, that whisper, that strange feeling that something more is waiting. But not everyone listens. Because answering means leaving behind what's safe. It means walking away from who you used to be. And people cling to their comfort like it's life itself. They tell themselves they need more time, more signs, more confidence. But destiny doesn't negotiate. It's a one-way invitation. Either you move when it calls, or you stay where you are and watch the door close. You ever notice how hesitation always comes disguised as logic? The mind starts listing reasons. Too risky, too early, too unrealistic. It tells you to wait, to be cautious, to think it through. But thinking too long kills movement. You end up analyzing yourself into stillness. The irony is, the moment you start hesitating, you already know what you're supposed to do. You just don't want to admit it, because deep down, you're not confused. You're scared. And fear loves to sound reasonable. Destiny doesn't speak in comfort. It speaks in disruption. It ruins your plans, shakes your peace, forces you to face things you've been avoiding. That's why people mistake it for chaos. They think something's wrong when their life starts to shift. But sometimes the destruction is the message. It's life tearing down what can't hold your purpose anymore. You keep trying to rebuild what was never meant to last, and destiny keeps breaking it apart until you finally stop fixing and start listening. You can't reason with destiny. It doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't wait for the perfect timing or the perfect mood. It speaks when it wants, and it expects you to obey, not out of fear, but out of alignment. Because when it calls, it's not offering a chance, it's issuing an order. That's what people don't get. You don't choose destiny. You respond to it. Ignoring it is the only choice that costs you everything. The moment you hesitate, you lose the rhythm. Destiny moves fast. It's alive, unpredictable, fierce. It rewards those who act, not those who think about acting. The ones who hesitate always tell the same story. They almost did it, they almost tried, they almost became. Almost is the word that buries dreams. It's the graveyard of potential, and hesitation is the shovel. People wait for certainty before moving. They want guarantees, assurances, signs that everything will work out. But destiny doesn't give guarantees. It gives direction. You don't get to see the full map. You just get the next step. And that's the test. Whether you'll trust the voice when the path isn't clear. Whether you'll move without proof. Whether you'll leap before you see the ground. That's where most people fail. They want control, but destiny demands surrender. Hesitation feels harmless. You tell yourself you're just being careful, that you'll do it later, that the moment will come back. But destiny isn't patient. It finds someone else, someone braver, hungrier, reckless enough to say yes without thinking. And then you watch them live the life you were meant to have. You see your reflection in someone else's success and realize the only difference was obedience. You hesitated. They didn't. Destiny doesn't shout forever. The first call is loud. The second is softer. The third is silence. Not because it's gone, but because you taught yourself to tune it out. Every time you say, "not yet," the voice fades a little more, until one day it's gone, and you convince yourself it was never real. You call it fantasy, bad timing, coincidence. But deep down, you know it was you. You didn't move when the world was ready to open for you. Hesitation is a betrayal, not of fate, but of yourself. Because destiny is already inside you, waiting to be obeyed. It's not some voice in the clouds. It's the one in your chest that never shuts up. The one that knows when you're lying to yourself. The one that gets louder every time you settle for less. You can numb it, drown it, ignore it, but you can't erase it. It's the reminder that you were meant for something greater than hesitation. People think obedience means submission, but it's actually power. To obey your destiny means to trust your calling more than your fear. It means acting even when your voice shakes. It means walking into the unknown because something inside you knows you belong there. And when you do, the whole world shifts. Doors open that weren't even there before. Everything starts moving around you, aligning, rearranging. Because destiny rewards obedience with momentum. The cruelest illusion is thinking you'll get another chance. That destiny will wait, but it doesn't. It speaks once, maybe twice, and then it turns away. Not out of anger, but out of law. The moment passes because it wasn't meant to linger. It was meant to test. To see if you'd listen, if you'd move, if you'd trust. And when you hesitate, you fail that test. You choose fear over purpose. You choose comfort over calling. And destiny doesn't beg for believers. It replaces them.